Welcome to the fastest daf in town today. L'Masechtas Bava Kama Daf Lamed Tes. We are going to begin on the very top of Lamed Tes Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisin, Shershel Pikeach. If you have an ox that belongs to a typical person, but that ox Shenogach Shershel Cheresh, it ended up goring a person who is a Cheresh, deaf mute, and not him, but his shore. So the din is that not only a cheresh, but if let's say you would have gored the shore of a shoita or a katan, chayiv. In that situation, you are going to be chayiv because you should have been responsible and you are a pikeach. However, how about mishel cheresh of a katan shenagasher shel pikeach? What's the din the other way around, where the owner of a shore that gored, he happens to be a shaita. He is mentally deranged. So on this, the Mishnah says, potter. There's no damages that are paid for. And Rashi says, Gemara Mefarish, Gemara is going to explain, Dein ma'midin apitropis letam ligvais megufo, that we don't appoint an apitropis for an animal which is a tam to collect from its body. Of a meniski muid, when it comes to an animal which is a muid, a wild animal, ma'midin apitropis, l'shor hayisomim, then, because we're also talking about katanim over here, so we will appoint an apitropis if there's an animal which is a muid, liyos b'makom habalim, that the apitropis takes upon the ownership, almost not that he's the owner because it's the saimim who own it, but because they're kids they can't watch this animal, so the apitropis takes upon this role, l'kayim v'huid b'balav, and therefore they're the ones responsible. V'goyven hanezek menichse hakarka shel yisaimim. And therefore, interestingly enough, Rashi points out that if this animal is a muid, even though it's a katan, it's yisaimim, they don't have parents, nonetheless will still collect if it's a muid. Of a tam, who, when it comes to the din of a tam, not only is a chatzin only collect from the goof of the animal, but whom a taltalin, therefore it's not considered like minaliyah. Minaliyah could extend beyond the animal itself, and therefore it could include even land. However, sendulitz metaltalin, which is the body of the animal, in ma'mid apitropis l'kach. We're not going to appoint an apitropis for that. Okay. So that is an important concept. Shor shel cheresh shenagach l'shor shel pikech pater. So there's a chiluk between the tam and the muad. Back in the Mishnah. Shor shel cheresh shedavakatim shenagach, again, if you have an ox of any of these people and a gourd, so based in mamidin lehen apitropis, as we appointed, it said the basin is not going to appoint an apitropis, meidin lehen bifnei apitropis, and they will testify in front of the apitropis. On this, Rashi says, at this point in understanding this Mishnah, we have the understanding the hashda the meidin behen the kaimer the migvi chatzinezek tomos, that we say that you should be able to collect half the damages for kasha racial seifa. There's going to be a kasha. So the question is, are they able to collect? Are they able to collect or not? Because the reisha and the seifa seem to be a stira. The reisha says that if a shore of, let's say, a katan, who is a yosam, so the din is that you'll be pater. He's pater from paying. But this says clearly that there will be a chiyuv. So as you said, maybe the nafka mina is going to be, as Rashi said, between a tam and a muad. Back in the Mishnah, nispakeach hacherish. Let's say you had a cherish, but he ended up becoming capable of hearing and speaking, or for that matter, nishtapa hashait. The person was able to somehow rid himself of this mental illness, or v'higdil hakatan, or the case of a child who grows up. Chazer l'tamusai, Divrei Meir. Even though this animal is a muad, so we say that now that they take upon themselves the status of a bardas, so therefore the din is, it goes back to its status of being a tam. Says Rashi, T'ksav rishus mishane muad, shatz rishus zeh v'nichlas liad bal macherim. Harashus mishane as din ha'adasai. So it goes back to becoming a tam because we say that even though it was a mu'id, but now that it's in the domain, the control of someone else, or of a different person, or could be an adult, or again, he wasn't in control, now he is in control. So therefore, because now there's a different potential element of shmira, because it's a different person, or now it's a bardas, even though it was a mu'id, it goes back to the status of being a tam. Divra Meir. Rav Yossi Omer no hari hu b'cheskasoi. He remains in his chazak of being a mu'id. And then the Mishnah concludes, sure, it's tadin eno chayiv misa. Shenemer ki yigach v'lo sheyigichuhu. So let's say, for example, you have an ox, which Rashi says is shemiyuchin l'negichos. It's designated specifically for goring. In other words, let's say you have a bull, in which its process of training this bull is for bullfighting. So it is constantly going to be engaged in violent acts. So you're enochai misa, because the pasuk says ki yikach. It's only when it gores, not when you made him gore. So if you programmed and trained this bull to gore, so therefore it's not really the bull's fault. Okay. So therefore it's a meat in the pasuk of ki yigach, which we'll get to. Hagufakash, as we pointed out, there's a steer in our Mishnah. Amrit shor shel cher shel v'katan shel shor shel pikech pater. Alma ema mid apotropos l'tam ligvos meguvay. So we see that you do not collect from this katan, and therefore it means we don't have an apotropos to collect if it's a tam from its body, from the body of the animal. You must say for shor shel cher shel v'katan shen nagach. It says clearly based on middle hem apotropos, middle hem apotropos. Alma ma'idel hem apotropos l'tam ligvos megufo. So again, it's a stira, and we're assuming that both of the cases is talking about a tam. So do we appoint an apotropos, and therefore this katan is chayav or not? So Omer Rava hachi katan. This is how you read the Mishnah. V'im huchsaku. If let's say there was a chazaka nagchanin of it goring ma'amidel ham apotropos midel hen mifnei apotropos u'mishavinan lahu mu'id. It's considered to have the status of a mu'id. So now that it keeps goring, now you're going to have to pay him an aliyah. So therefore, as Rashi says, the whole idea is you're not going to collect the chatzi nezek, but at least, mind, you'll be pater, but it will have on record that it keeps goring until eventually it becomes a mu'id, and therefore the din is going to have to pay him an aliyah afterwards because it's now a mu'id. So the Gemara says, Mi aliyas man. Who is he collecting from? So Rav Yochanan mi aliyas yisaimim, from above and beyond the aliyahs, above and beyond the goof of the animal. So who are you collecting this extra from? So the answer is the yisaimim, because the yisaimim are the one that owns this animal. Rav Yosef ben Chanina omer mi aliyas apotropos. Interestingly enough, the apotropos is the one you're going to be collecting from, which is kind of hard to imagine because that would probably deter a person from wanting to be an apotropos to help out these yisaimim. But nonetheless, that's what he says. So, does Rav Yochanan really say that we're going to collect from aliyas yisomim? Rav Yehuda Rav Asi ein. It says ein niskakin l'nichsi yisaimim, that we do not go into the possessions to collect anything from the yisaimim. El imkin ribis oichelos behen, unless ribis is basically eating them up, which basically means, as Rashi says, ein niskakin. So let's say el imkin ribis oichelos behen shalav avihem min nachri beribis. Let's say their father borrowed money from a non-Jew and there's massive interest. We're concerned in that case of the Yisomim incurring a massive loss because the father died, and now all of a sudden they have to pay this massive loan with massive interest. So they're going to sell their possessions to be able to pay off the loan. So normally we would never do this, but because of the great financial loss on behalf of the Yisomim, so there was the one exception. And now here's the key of Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan Omer, Ol shtar sheish bo ribis, ol ksuvas isha mishum zayni. So we see Rav Yochanan argues that we do not collect from Yisaimim. Says Rashi, Mishum Zaini, Shekol Zman Shlo Yitnu Lo Ksuba Nizainis Mishulhan. So he says that anytime, for example, that you don't pay off the ksuba, not only ribis, also which they're losing, but also ksubas isha, because every time that they don't pay off the ksuba, so the woman can still get their mazonos, and therefore she's going to keep eating all the mazonos until the ksuba is paid off. So we see Rabbi Yochanan should not hold me Elias Yisem because you don't collect the Yisem. So your answer, you're right. Epach Rabbi Yochanan Elias Apitropin Apitropsin. So it has to be flipped around. Some Rav what? Mishum Dekash Rav Yochanan. Just because you have the stira Mishavisle Rav Yosi Bar Chanina Taya, we're going to say that the din of what Rav Yosi Bar Chanina was like a mistake. Rav Yosi Bar Chanina Dainahu, who's a judge. The Nachas Umke de Dina, right? So he's very careful to look into the matter. Says Rashi, so by the mazik we indeed will collect from the Yisaimim. So how can you tell me that Rav Yochanan, that according to Rav Yosef Chanina, he's going to end up saying mi'aliyas Yisaimim, that you're going to collect from the Yisaimim? Says Rashi, lo yikram niskach nechsi Yisaimim. So how do we understand this? So Rav Yochanan mi'aliyas Yisaimim. So Rav Yochanan, so the answer is oilam lo tepoch, don't switch around, umazik shiny. So you're right. Rav Yochanan will make an exception that normally the din is that we will not collect from Yisaimim. However, when it comes to a mazik, by a mazik we indeed will collect from the Yisaimim. Okay, so therefore that's the point. Sometimes we will collect because the Yisaimim, there was a din of damages, and since it was their ox that did the damages, so then we will collect from the Yisaimim. However, otherwise, as he said before, when it comes to any other situation, he does hold in his skakal nixi Yisaimim. We're not going to collect from Yisaimim, except when it comes to a mazik, there we'll make an exception. Rav Yochanan Omer mi'aliyas Yisaimim. Rav Yochanan says, again, you collect from the Yisaimim. Di'amer mi'aliyas apitropis, because if in fact you say you're going to collect from the apitropis, as we continue Lamatesamad Beis, as I mentioned before, mimani v'loy avdi. What's going to happen? And apitropos is going to be like, why should I put myself into this position where their ox is going to damage and I'm going to have to pay out of pocket for it? So therefore, it makes sense, says Rabbi Yochanan, that wouldn't be the situation. Okay, let's look at question 14. So he said, because Dilma Mimani V'Lavdi, because he's not going to want to do it. And then the second part, which we did not see yet, I don't think, Umadua Kishehemis Shor Shalhem Adam Pater Mekayfer. Okay, we didn't see that, but we'll actually see that on tomorrow's daf, on daf mem. Okay. Rav Yosef Rabbi Chanina Omer Mi'aliyas Apitropos. You do have to collect from the Apitropos' money. However, then they'll get paid back later when the Yisaimim get older. So right now the Apitropos is the one who pays, but eventually he'll hold on to his receipts and he'll be able to get afterwards from the Yisaimim when they get older. Okay, as we said, because otherwise no Apitropos is going to ever do this. He's not going to want to help out these Yisaimim. So he said, actually, it's a machlokas tanoim whether or not we're going to appoint apitropos in order to be able to collect even from the goof of the animal, even though it's metaltalin. Some will say that will still appoint an apitropos even for that. Desanya, shorshin is charshu balav. Let's say you have an ox in which the owner became a cherish, vishinishtatu balav, or again, he became a shaita, and then they went to another city, another country. Yehuda ben Nekaisa Omer Sumchas Harihu Kit Betamusai. We say that this animal goes back to its state of being a tam, until you testify in front of the Baal, says Rashi. So what happened? Harihu Betamusai. You don't collect from the goring. Because we don't collect from a guf. We do, so obviously it's a machlokas. And we do collect from abitrapus. So we see clearly the Tanakama holds that even when it comes to a tam, we're going to do this to collect begufa. So let's say the cherish becomes capable of hearing and seeing. The person is no longer mentally deranged, and the kid becomes older. And the Baal comes from Medina Siyam, Yehuda ben Nekai Sa'imir Sumchas Chazla Tamusai. It goes back to the status of being a tam, which is an interesting word. Chazar goes back, which was once a muad. Sheidabo Nimni Baal. Till he testified to Baal. Rabbi Yosaimer Harihu Beches Kasai. It remains the status as a shor hamuad. Amr so what does it mean? Harihu Tamusai. What does that mean? The Karma Sumchas. Ilema Delo Me'ain Klal, that it never becomes a muad. The fact that it says it goes back to becoming a tam must be that it was, in fact, considered a muad. Elamai harihu b'temusa. What does that mean? Harihu b'temimusai. The animal remains whole. That it does not lose out. Namely, as a tam you collect from the guf. Here it remains intact, whole. Alma, what do you mean it's whole? It must be that you're not collecting from the body because it's betamusoi. Interesting. The word tam also means it's betamusoi, it's complete. We do appoint an apitropos. So indeed, we see that this is a machlokas tanaim. The seifa b'may kmifli. So what is the seifa arguing about? Rishus mishani ikaminayu. Whether or not the fact that it goes to a different rishus, as we mentioned before in the previous Amud, does that change the status of the animal? Sumcha saber rishus mishana, it does change, so the animal goes to tam. Rabbi Yossi saber rishus enu mishana, and therefore it remains a muad. Okay. Okay, weiter. Let's just go straight. Tanu Rabbanan. Shor cherish of the katan shenagach. So if you have an ox of these people that gored, so which again our Mishnah really talked about this. Rabbi Yochanan Mishalom Chati Nezek. He says that you only pay Chati Nezek, which again maybe it's pashit if we're dealing with if it's a tam, we'll see. Rabbi Yaakov Maya Vidite. What exactly is he referring to? El Ema Rabbi Yaakov Ober Mishalom Chati Nezek. So b'maya skina. So what is he talking about? Ibatam shita. Obviously, to kol yamanami chatzatach mishalom. If you tell me you have to pay chati nezek, any person pays chati nezek if it's a tam. V'iba muid, if the animal was a muid, so idi avdali shmira klalo. So if he did a shmira, then maybe he shouldn't have to pay anything. Says Rashi, ma'ula v'nifritza b'layla. Let's say something happened with an oinus, it snuck out at night. Or shirpartsu listim mishum hachi patulim anezik shom klal lo boyushum. You shouldn't have to pay anything. So idi abdulay shmir klal lo boyushum. You don't have to pay anything. Vida lo abdulay shmir. If he didn't do any proper shmira or proper shmira, then kuli nezik boy shlume. So exactly what is he talking about? Chati nezik. So amar ravel oil b'muid. So in second, if the animal's a muid, so why do we say that a shor cheresh of the katan, that animal that gores, you pay chatzi nezek? If it's a muad, you should pay him nezek shalom. V'hakamayskinan the avdi shmir pachusa, avdi lo shmir meula. That it did a small shmira, but didn't do a full proper shmira. So what does that mean? It says Rashi, no befaneha karoi. Shut the door properly, as we're going to see later on. Daf nun hey amud beis. Del shiachayil alamad baruch matsuya zehu karoi. If you have a door that is going to stay shut and locked under normal conditions, so that's a shmir pchusa. The itzrach hashmi'inan is coming to tell us the misham chatzi nezek v'lukula. You pay half the damages if something does happen there. Lafuki mahani tanoi, excluding the tanoim the pligi b'shalei pirkin, yigamandim the potter, v'ikan machayavli nezek shalom. So when it comes to this shmira, but that was a shmira pachusa, so it's actually a three-way machlokas, and he holds this middle ground that you would pay chati nezek by doing this for a muad. Skipping a few lines, The tamu sagile b'shmir pechusa. When it comes to a tam, it's not enough for shmir pechusa. The lo miyatri be kroi. V'afagav the hachtzad Thomas meguf and mishalom isli Rav Yaakov ma'amida b'tropos l'tam l'gbos meguf v'karabana the b'lig l'sumchos halei. So Rav Yaakov saw Barak and the Gemara Savak Rabbi Yehuda. So the Omer, he said, Sad Thomas b'mkoimo imedes. The shore retains its status of a tam with regard to paying Chatzi Nezek as a muad. So it remains on some level like a tam. They only pay Chatzi Nezek. As a muad, you pay an extra second half. Here, you only pay the first half, that of the tam. So Sad Thomas is b'mkoimo imedes. The Savak Rabbi Yehuda the Omer muad sagli v'shmir b'chusa. When it comes to a muad, you only have to do this smaller shmira. With Savak Rabbanan the Omer made apotropos l'tam l'gbos megufo. That you will appoint apotropos, would therefore that's the reason why a katan or yosem will be chayiv. Amalei by v'lo pligi. You tell me they don't argue about sanya. Shor shecher shel v'katan shenagach. Rabbi Yehuda mechayiv Rav Yaakov v'chatzi nezek l'misham. So we see a machlokes whether you're chayiv or you only pay chatzi nezek when an ox of, let's say, a katan damages. So Rabbi Barula Masha mechayiv Rabbi Yehuda perish Rav Yaakov. When Rabbi Yehuda said you're chayiv, Rabbi Yaakov was just explaining how much you chayiv is chatzi nezek. We don't argue. Labadi Yom Pligi. Labadi says they argue, but my pligi. So Hachamai skin b'muad. We're talking about a wild animal, v'loi natri klal, and the animal was not watched at all. So Rabbi Yaakov Savar Rabbi Yehuda b'chada u'paglei b'chada. He holds like him with one and argues with him with one. What is that? Gemara explains. Savar Rabbi Yehuda b'chada v'il Rabbi Yehuda Savar sad Thomas b'mkoimoi medes. He holds, again, the shore retains its status of a tam with regard to paying chatzi nezek. As a muad, you pay an extra second half. Here, you only pay the first half, that of the tam. So, sad Thomas b'mkoimoi medes. Pogel b'chada te'ilu Rabbi Yehuda savar midilhem apotropos l'tam l'gbos megufo Rabbi Yaakov savar ein mamidin, that we do not appoint the apotropos, and therefore we won't be chayiv. V'lo mishalim el palga demuid. Therefore, you only have to pay half. Amalei Rav Achabar Yaakov Ravina Bishlam Labadi Emer Pligi Shopper. I can understand why it's a machlokas. Elo Ravadi Emer Pligi, they don't argue. So Adamoikili B'muid Nukma B'tam. Why do they mention the case of a muad? They mention this case of a tam, says Rashi. Elo Ravadi Emer Pligi V'Isalch Rav Yaakov Mamid Amachol Tam, that you can appoint an apotropos to collect from the assignment from the tam, even the animal's a tam. Adamukil Kamba B'muid Nukma B'tam. Why does it mention the case of a muad? Mention the case of a tam because you can collect also as a tam. As we continue to Mem and Aleph. So here, Rabbi Yehuda, the Avnei Shmir B'chusa. According to him, you did a basic shmira. The Avnei Shmir M'ula. Rabbi Lezman Yaakov, the Avnei Shmir Klai didn't do anything. The sign Rabbi Lezman Yaakov Aimer Echad Tam Echad Muad Shishamrim Shmir B'chusa Paturin. Even when it comes to a tam, even if we do a minor shmira like shutting the door, you're going to be potter. And it's coming to tell you this chiddush that Rabbi Yaakov holds that you will appoint apotropos for a tam to collect from it. So we see we can use the case of a tam, which is actually a bigger chiddush, that even by a tam we do appoint an apotropos. So use the case of a tam instead of a muad. So Malay Hachikamar Chadad Isbei Tarti Taima. It's one which has two reasons. Says Rashi, they don't argue. So Sagli Sad Moedes Bishmir Pchus, Sad Thomas Mimkoim Medes Vitishma Namid and maybe Abitrouble Tam Ligvosim. So it actually teaches two things. It teaches indeed that Abitropos does collect from Yisem even from a tam when it's an animal damages the side of a tam. But also when we dealing about a muad, it teaches the chiddush about the din of Shmir Pchusa. That we say, "V'tzad Thomas bim koimoi medes." Ravina oimer rishus mishani b'ginai. As we said before, the question is if it changed owners. That's where the machlokas does it go back to the status of being a tam. Going to havi muad, who was muad, v'nis pakeach hacherish, or v'nishtat ba hashaita, or v'higdal akatan. Who desaver how you b'chaskas or b'yachos haver rishus mishana. So therefore, the machlokas is again whether or not we say that it changes its status. because of the change of a person who now has das. Okay, we're going to stop there. And okay, let's try question TA20. I got this totally wrong. That's a hard question. TA27. Okay, let's see. Shor cheresh of a cotton shenagach Rav Yaakov or misham chatzi nezek. Madua misham chatzi nezek alpha be the muad myri. So this is three answers. So again, what does it mean? Going all the way over here. Why shor cheresh of a cotton shenagach Rav Yaakov misham chatzi nezek? Why, if we're dealing with the status of being a muad, would you have to pay chatzi nezek? So the answers are either sheshamer shmira pechusa, you did an inferior shmira, u'mishalom rak chatzi shel tzad tomus, and you only pay for the tzad tomus, which is answer number one. Again, the oil b'muad v'gamaskinan the avdi shmira pechusa v'avdi shmira me'ula, and in that situation, you only collect the tzad tomus. The first half is considered to be the chatzi nezek is magufo. Okay, that's answer number one. Or shalosh shomer klal, you didn't watch it at all. Vein mamid abitrapus l'tam ligvos magufo misham rak tzad hamuadois. So it could be taka that you're not chayiv at all because we do not appoint an apitropos. Right? So this is the second answer, that we do not appoint an apitropos. I'm trying to find it over here. Rav Yaakov Savar ein mamidin. So that's a second answer. That the reason we just don't collect on the side of being a tam of the tam because we don't collect from the guf except to collect the sad hamuadois. Or the third answer is we just did kigun shehuad bebeis apitropos v'nis pakeach acherish v'rshus mishana. So the other alternative answer is again whether we hold rshus mishana ikubinayu. So the fact that it did damage in the rshus of the apitropos, but then afterwards it ended up doing damage. It ended up the ownership, if you will, it was still always the Yisayimims, but now that the person became older, so therefore there's a change in rishus. So rishus mishana ikbenayu, and therefore that is the third possibility. So again, either we say we're talking about it's a muad, so why do you pay chatzi nezek? It's on sad tomos. Second answer is because it's there was no shmir at all. Not that it was some shmir and you pay only chatzi on the sad tomos. The second answer is that there was no shmira, and the reason why is because we don't appoint apitropos to collect magufo, or we say what is it din by mishana rishus mishana ikaminayu. Okay. Let's see what maybe question 20 TB 28. Shosha chashachot of nagach. Rabbi Yehuda Machai, Rabbi Yaakov Omer Chatzin Zezek Misham. Laman Diarma the Pligi Be'ezah Din Pligi. So where do they argue? So let's see if I wrote. Im hu cherish v'achach zman hu yochel ishmoya v'chein l'kulam im chayzim liyos tam achrizeh o adayin muadim. So that is true, but that only answers. That's only one answer. Okay, that's the second answer of them arguing over there. Again, the second possible answer, as we said, is that there was no shmir at all, and therefore you will maybe only collect from the chatzi, which is the muad, but not the chatzi, which is tam. Adkan.